Years before that fateful night, Nick and Jana Cirilli were a newlywed couple full of dreams. They met during their university years, bonding over late-night study sessions and shared aspirations for their future. After graduation, they embarked on a new chapter, moving to a small, idyllic town where Nick pursued a career in finance, and Jana excelled as an insurance executive. Early in their marriage, life tested their bond. Nick's family faced a crisis when his brother's reckless behavior caused a fire that destroyed his home. Nick spent months helping to rebuild not just his brother's house, but also his sense of responsibility. Meanwhile, Jana had her own struggles, balancing a demanding job and loneliness during Nick's prolonged absences. Their love endured these challenges, but it left subtle cracks in their foundation. One Christmas party marked a turning point. While Nick dealt with his brother's chaos, Jana attended her company's event alone. Fueled by a mix of festive cheer and professional triumph, Jana made choices that haunted her ever since. She buried the memories deep, but the weight of guilt lingered. Despite their renewed efforts to strengthen their marriage, the ghosts of that night remained a shadow. Those buried memories re-emerged in fragments during the fateful truth or dare game at Lana's party. A seemingly playful evening evolved into a powder keg, testing not only Jana's resolve, but also Nick's trust, forged through years of rebuilding their life together. Nick and Jana Cirilli spent their Friday evening at a gathering hosted by Lana, Jana's closest friend, and her husband, Steve. The night began lightheartedly, with laughter and casual conversation flowing as freely as the wine. Eager to unwind, Jana indulged more than usual, relishing the carefree atmosphere. When the group decided to add excitement by playing a round of truth or dare, the mood subtly shifted. Lana clapped her hands, her grin mischievous and challenging. "All right, let's kick this off. Who's game?" The guests exchanged wary looks, particularly the women. Lana was well known for turning innocent games into boundary-pushing adventures. "I'll play, but I'm drawing a line at anything ridiculous," Sarah said, raising a hesitant hand. "And I'm definitely keeping my clothes on." Lisa chimed in quickly, echoing her concern. "Same here. Let's not get too wild." Lana rolled her eyes, a smirk tugging at her lips. Fine. We'll keep it tame," she said with an exaggerated sigh, her tone betraying her promise. At first, the game was harmless. Some funny confessions, lighthearted dares, and a lot of laughter. But as more drinks were poured, inhibitions faded, and the questions became more suggestive. Sensing the shift, Sarah suggested a rule. If anyone's uncomfortable, they can skip a question, no penalties. The group murmured in agreement. Lana grinned. "Fair enough." The game continued, each round growing bolder. Then it was Lana's turn again, and she turned her attention to Jana, her eyes glinting with amusement. "All right, Jana, truth or dare?" Jana, already tipsy, giggled and took another sip of wine. "Truth." Lana leaned forward. "Who was the best lover you've ever had?" The room went quiet. Jana hesitated before giving Nick a playful smile. "Nick, of course." A few chuckles followed, but then Jana, in her drunken haze, let out another giggle, set her glass down, and added, "Actually, not really." The mood shifted instantly. Lana raised her brows. "Ooh, not really?" Murmurs spread across the room. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, she really just said that." Another guest shook her head. "That's brutal." Nick's face hardened, his expression a mix of embarrassment and anger. Lana, always ready to stir the pot, smirked. "Well, Nick, looks like you've got some work to do." Without a word, Nick got up, walked to the fridge, grabbed a beer, and didn't return to the game. Jana, sensing the tension, tried to backtrack, laughing nervously. "I was just joking. Of course he's the best." But the damage had been done. One of the men exhaled. "Wow, that was rough." A woman leaned in and muttered, "She didn't even say second best. She basically told her husband he's not even in the top rankings." Jana turned to Lana, her frustration evident. "Damn it, Lana, I thought you were my friend." Lana shrugged. "I was just joking too. Go fix things with Nick." Jana found Nick standing near the TV with a few guys, but he wasn't paying attention to the game on the screen. She approached carefully. "Nick, I'm sorry." She placed a hand on his arm. "I drank too much. I thought it was funny, but I guess it wasn't." He didn't look at her. "Come back to the game. Let me fix this." His jaw clenched. "No, just stay away from me." Jana swallowed hard. "Nick, if you stay, I'll leave." His voice was quiet but firm. He turned and started saying his goodbyes. Lana walked over. "Where's he going?" Jana barely managed to whisper, "Home." "I'll go talk to him before he leaves," Lana offered. "I made it worse. I'm sorry." Jana grabbed her wrist. Let him go. He doesn't want to hear from anyone right now. Lana scoffed. We joke like this all the time. What's his problem? Then she paused, smirking slightly. Unless you actually cheated. Jana's stomach dropped. She didn't answer. Lana's smirk vanished. Oh my God, you did! Jana's voice was barely a whisper. Please don't say anything. If Nick finds out others know, my marriage is over. She gripped Lana's hand. Promise me. Not even to Steve. Lana hesitated, but finally sighed. Okay, not a word. But we're talking about this when you sober up. Jana nodded. I need to go home. He probably won't talk to me, but I have to try. She turned and left. Lana exhaled sharply and glanced back at the party. I'm taking her home, just to make sure she gets there safe. By the time Lana caught up, Jana was already at her front door. Jana! Jana waved her off dismissively and disappeared inside. She went straight upstairs, changed into a nightgown, and climbed into bed. Hesitantly, she reached out, lightly touching Nick's shoulder. He didn't move. She ran her nails down his back the way he liked. Still no response. She thought she saw a tear slip down his cheek. Leaning in, she whispered, Nick, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. I love you. For a long moment, silence. Then his voice, cold and distant. Don't lie to me. I know what you said, and I know what it meant. Jana's breath hitched. She started to speak, her voice trembling. Nick! But Nick cut her off sharply. Go to hell and leave me alone. Without waiting for a response, he rose abruptly, stormed out of the room, and slammed the door behind him. Jana curled into a ball and sobbed until she drifted into an uneasy sleep. The next morning, she woke up late. The kitchen was empty. No coffee, no sign that Nick had even stayed the night. He must have left early, avoiding her. Sitting at the table, her head pounded from both the hangover and the weight of her mistake. The memories of last night replayed in her head, each moment worse than the last. She groaned, her voice barely above a whisper. Why the hell did I say that? Desperate, she grabbed her phone and typed out a message. Nick, I'm so sorry. I drank too much and wasn't thinking. You know Lana. She jokes about everything, but she doesn't know anything about us. Please don't blame her. Baby, I didn't mean it. You are my best in everything. Please forgive me. I love you with all my heart. Come home, or at least call me. Please. Jana sat at the kitchen table, a fresh cup of coffee steaming in front of her, but she barely noticed. She pressed her fingers to her temples, trying to will away the pounding headache and the flood of memories from the previous night. Every moment replayed in her mind, each one worse than the last. She groaned, her voice barely above a whisper. Why the hell did I say that? Her phone buzzed, jolting her out of her thoughts. Her pulse spiked. Nick? Was he finally calling her back? She grabbed the phone, but her heart sank when she saw the name on the screen. Lana. She let it ring. A few minutes later, the phone buzzed again. Jana sighed. There was no avoiding this. Reluctantly, Jana answered the call. Lana. Lana's voice came through sharp and insistent. What the hell, Jana? You started telling me something last night and then just shut down. And Nick storming off like that? That wasn't about some stupid joke. Spill it. Jana exhaled slowly, struggling to keep her voice steady. It's nothing, Lana. Nonsense, Lana shot back. I'm coming over. Lana, don't make the coffee. I'll be there in 10 minutes, Lana interrupted, hanging up before Jana could argue. Before Jana could argue, the line went dead. Exactly 7 minutes later, the side door creaked open. Lana strolled in, spotted the coffee waiting for her, and smirked as she took a sip. At least you still know how I like it, she said, sliding into the chair across from Jana. Now, talk. Jana stared at her coffee cup, gripping it tightly. I can't, Lana scoffed. We've been best friends forever. When have I not had your back? Now spill. Jana closed her eyes, guilt pressing down on her. She had to tell someone, and Lana was the only person she trusted. Promise me, she whispered. No one can know, not even Steve. Lana's expression shifted, her curiosity sharpening. Jana, what the hell did you do? Swear it. Lana studied her for a moment, then nodded. I swear. Jana swallowed hard. Swear on your kids. Lana's brows furrowed. Jesus, Jana, she sighed. Fine, on my kids. Now tell me what's going on. Jana inhaled shakily. It happened 5 years ago, before we moved here. Lana leaned forward, her expression intent. Go on. I was working for an insurance company, and we had an incredible year. The Christmas party was a big deal, and since I was one of the executives organizing it, I had to be there. Nick was supposed to come with me, but... Jana paused. her gaze unfocused. His brother accidentally started a fire at his house. Things got chaotic and Nick had to help. Lana nodded knowingly. That sounds like him. Jana offered a faint, sad smile. Yeah, he told me to go without him, to have fun. I didn't want to, but I didn't have much of a choice. It was my job to oversee the event. Looking back, I should have skipped it. I should have been with him instead. She rubbed her temples, as though trying to push away the weight of the memory. Her voice grew quieter. When I was getting ready, I wanted to look good. I picked this black dress. Tight, short, low cut. Something Nick would have loved. Lana stayed silent, waiting as Jana hesitated. Then her voice dropped further. But I realized I wasn't dressing for Nick. He wasn't going to be there. Lana's lips pressed together. Jana, I still wanted the attention, Jana admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. That was my first mistake. Lana leaned back, folding her arms tightly. You went alone? With a coworker, Jana admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Lana's expression darkened, her eyes narrowing. Who? Mark, Jana muttered, avoiding her gaze. Lana let out a slow, measured breath. Start from the beginning, Jana. No skipping details. Jana closed her eyes for a moment, gathering her thoughts before forcing herself to continue. The party was like any other. Drinks, laughter, a few people getting a little too friendly under the mistletoe. At first, I stuck with my colleagues, trying to keep things professional. But as the night went on, I kept drinking. Mark and another guy, Jake, kept pouring me drinks, flirting, telling me to loosen up. Lana's face hardened, her jaw tightening. It wasn't the first time they'd made suggestive comments to me, Jana confessed. And to my shame, I flirted back. I should have shut it down, but I didn't. I let it happen. Lana's fingers curled tightly around her cup, her knuckles turning white. Define happen. Jana's hands trembled as she tried to steady her voice. The way they looked at me, the way they talked to me, I didn't stop them. I encouraged it. The jokes turned into touches. The touches turned into... She swallowed hard, her voice breaking. More. Jesus, Jana, Lana said, her voice sharp but laced with disbelief. They led me away from the crowd, Jana whispered, her shame thick in her throat. Somewhere out of sight. And I let them... Lana's jaw tightened, her voice low and firm. Tell me you stopped it. Jana bit her lip, her eyes dropping to the floor. I didn't. Lana exhaled sharply, dragging a hand through her hair in frustration. Go on. Jana's voice trembled as she continued. By the end of the night, I was in charge of locking up. I turned off the lights, shut the main room, and went back to my office to grab my things. I should have just called a cab and left. Lana's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering across her face. But, Jana hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. When I opened my office door, Mark was there. Lana's grip tightened around her coffee cup, her knuckles white. Jana swallowed hard. He grabbed my wrist before I could even turn on the light. Then he whispered, let's finish what we started. And he kissed me. Jana! I didn't pull away, Jana admitted, her voice hollow. Then I felt another set of hands on me. Jake. He pressed against me from behind while Mark kissed me. Lana's expression darkened. Tell me you left. Jana squeezed her eyes shut. I should have, but I didn't. Lana inhaled sharply, shaking her head. Jana, what the hell? They touched me. I let them. I kissed them back. I wasn't thinking about Nick. Her voice broke. I wanted it. Lana's hands balled into fists. So what? They whispered that they'd been waiting for this moment. Jana continued, her voice barely audible. Then Jake shut the office door and locked it. A long, heavy silence settled between them. Jana clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. Lana, I swear, I never meant for it to go that far. I didn't plan this. I didn't set out to cheat. Lana stared at her, unblinking. Then slowly, she shook her head. You realize Nick is never going to believe that, right? Jana's eyes filled with tears. I know. Her voice cracked. But I need you to believe me, Lana. I need someone to believe me. Lana exhaled, watching her carefully. Then, after a long pause, she finally nodded. Okay, honey, I believe you. She leaned back in her chair, swirling her coffee absent-mindedly. I know firsthand how booze can make someone justify things they never would have sober. Jana let out a shaky breath, her hands trembling as she gripped her coffee mug. At the time, I thought it was harmless. Kissing, touching, nothing serious. The office door was locked, and as long as the main light stayed off, no one could see inside. I thought I could flirt without consequences. She let out a bitter laugh. I was so damn naive. Lana studied her. Jana, have you ever been caught between two men at once? She hesitated, her expression unreadable. Jana looked up. You have? Lana pressed her lips together. I've got my own confession, but finish yours first. Jana swallowed hard. All right. She inhaled deeply. Mark kept pushing my limits. Kissing him felt like a game until I heard Jake's zipper. My dress had already ridden up, and suddenly he was right there behind me. Lana's eyes darkened. Jesus. Mark took full advantage of the situation. Jana clenched her fists. That's when I realized this wasn't just fooling around. It was happening. Lana stayed silent. The touching escalated, and then the clothes started coming off. Yours or theirs? Lana asked. Both, Jana admitted. The feeling of two men wanting me was overwhelming. I kept whispering, No, I can't, I'm married. But my protests were weak, and before I knew it, all I had left was a G-string and heels. Lana blinked. Being desired like that, it was intoxicating, Jana confessed. And they didn't want to take turns. They wanted me together. At that moment, I wasn't thinking about Nick. Nothing could compare to the way I felt right then. Lana exhaled sharply, her expression unreadable. Jana's voice grew quiet, tinged with shame. It didn't last long, but it was the most intense, mind-blowing sex of my life. Lana's eyes widened slightly as she stared at Jana. And after? The second it was over, reality hit me like a ton of bricks, Jana confessed. I begged them to keep quiet. I knew if Nick ever found out, I'd lose everything. Lana folded her arms tightly. Did they? They promised, Jana said, her voice trembling. But deep down, I knew the fear of exposure would never leave me. Lana studied her carefully, her tone softening slightly. Now I understand why you reacted the way you did last night. Jana let out a hollow chuckle, bitter and self-deprecating. Yeah. Lana hesitated before asking, Did Nick ever find out? Jana's eyes welled up with tears and she quickly wiped them away. I need to finish this, Lana nodded, leaning forward. Go on. Jana took a steadying breath before continuing. They saw how shaken I was and swore they'd keep it a secret. That night, I avoided Nick completely. He came home late, exhausted, and I couldn't even look at him. The next 2 days were absolute hell. He knew something was off, kept asking me about it, but I denied everything. I thought I had buried it. Jana let out a bitter laugh, the sound hollow. Then the New Year's party happened. Lana's shoulders tensed. Oh no. I had no choice but to go, Jana said, her voice tight. If I refused, Nick would have gotten suspicious. Was Mark there? Lana asked cautiously. Yeah, Jana admitted. Jake wasn't, probably too scared his wife would catch on. But Mark, he got drunk. Lana's jaw tightened, her expression darkening. As the night went on, he got bolder, Jana continued. At one point, my secretary, Cindy, pulled me aside and whispered, Be careful. Your husband's here this time. Lana's eyes widened in alarm. People suspected? That's when I realized I hadn't been as discreet as I thought, Jana said, shame creeping into her tone. Lana shook her head in disbelief, her brows knitting together. Toward the end of the night, Mark got reckless, Jana went on, her voice faltering. Nick had stepped away to grab drinks, and Mark grabbed my hand. Come on, baby, he said. You haven't danced with me yet. Lana's body stiffened. What did you do? I panicked, Jana confessed. I yanked my hand back too fast, and then, right as Nick came back, Mark smirked and said, You weren't so shy at the Christmas party. Lana sucked in a sharp breath, her expression a mix of anger and disbelief. I pulled my hand away and told him to back off, Jana said, her voice trembling. But I was terrified. I had no idea how much Nick had heard. I convinced him that Mark was just being drunk and stupid. And somehow, I got him to leave early. Lana frowned. And when you got home? Nick wasn't stupid, Jana whispered. He asked me what was really going on. I lied, said Mark was just out of control, but he wasn't buying it. He told me if Mark ever touched me again, he'd eliminate him. Lana inhaled sharply, her eyes fixed on Jana. The next morning, Nick couldn't let it go, Jana said, her grip tightening on her coffee mug. He kept replaying it in his head. Then he looked at me and said, Cindy stepped in too quickly. Why did she handle Mark better than you did? And then, what did Mark mean about the Christmas party? Lana leaned in, her face tense. He was piecing it together, Jana nodded, her voice barely audible. He asked me directly, What the hell happened at the Christmas party? And then? Lana prompted. Jana's voice wavered as she continued. I broke down. I admitted I had too much to drink and let things get out of hand, but I didn't give him any details. Then he looked me straight in the eyes and asked, Did you sleep with him? Lana's breath hitched, the weight of the moment palpable. Jana swallowed hard. He didn't need me to answer. He saw it in my face. Lana exhaled, her expression grim. There was no point in lying, Jana said softly. So I told him the truth. I was drunk, I made a mistake, and I regretted it. He was furious, but he didn't push for details, and I didn't offer them. Lana sat quietly, her face unreadable as she absorbed the story. Jana let out a heavy sigh, her voice tinged with guilt. Nick never knew about Jake or what I let happen with both of them. He probably never even imagined I could do something like that. It didn't cross his mind to ask. Lana shook her head slowly. Damn. He left me that day, Jana admitted. No discussion, no argument. He just walked out. He wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't let me explain anything beyond what I'd already said. For 3 months, there was nothing. No calls, no messages. Silence. She clenched her fists, her knuckles white. When he finally agreed to talk, I was desperate. I begged him for another chance, every chance I got. Lana raised an eyebrow. And? Jana hesitated, shame creeping into her tone. I even offered him a hall pass, to sleep with someone else if it would even the score. Lana blinked in surprise. A hall pass? Damn, Jana. You must have been on your knees. I was, Jana said bluntly. He eventually agreed to counseling. After months of therapy, I could tell he was trying, looking for a way to move forward, to fix things. Lana took a slow sip of her coffee, studying Jana carefully. And you were ready to do anything to make that happen? Absolutely, Jana said, her voice steady now. I expected him to ask for the full story, to press for details, but he never did. And I was terrified of what knowing everything might do to him. I still don't know why he didn't push, but I was relieved. I didn't have to lie. Just keep some things unsaid. Lana smirked faintly. Selective honesty. Clever. Jana nodded, a faint, tired smile playing on her lips. Eventually, he agreed to try again, but there were conditions. Lana leaned forward. What kind of conditions? First, I had to sign a postnuptial agreement. If I ever cheated again, I'd walk away with nothing. Then I had to quit my job and we had to move. Lana raised an eyebrow. Damn, he wasn't messing around. No, he wasn't, Jana admitted. And then he surprised me. He actually kept his hall passes. I had completely forgotten I even suggested it, but I was so desperate to keep him that I didn't argue. Lana tilted her head. Did he ever use them? I don't think so. I think it was more about restoring his pride than actually sleeping with someone else, but I wasn't about to ask. So, you went along with everything. Jana nodded. I quit my job. We moved away from everyone we knew. Thankfully, Nick was able to transfer within his company and I found a job in insurance again. That's how we ended up here. Lana let out a low whistle. Damn, girl. I never let him down again. I made damn sure of that, Jana said firmly. Now you understand why I can't let last night turn into something bigger than it was. Lana nodded. Because if he ever found out the full truth, he'd walk for good. Exactly, Jana whispered. That's why I have to stick to my story. It was a dumb joke. He misinterpreted it, and he's the only man I've ever truly wanted. Jana fell silent, the weight of it all pressing down on her. Then Lana suddenly smirked. Okay, but real talk. Was it as good as it sounds? I mean, you did have a menage a trois. Jana's jaw dropped. Lana! I nearly lost my husband and I'm still hanging by a thread. Lana chuckled, then saw the genuine panic in Jana's face and sobered up, slightly. All right. But seriously, was it that good? Jana hesitated, then sighed. Between you and me, yes. It was the most exhilarating sexual experience of my life, but it can never happen again, and Nick can never know. Lana shook her head. I get it now. And I get why no man can ever really compete with two, she smirked. Still, I think my story might actually top yours. Jana narrowed her eyes. What did you do? Lana leaned in, lowering her voice. Okay, but swear, this never leaves this room. If Stevie ever found out, I'd be out on my act. Jana raised her hand. Swear. Packed, sealed. Now spill. Lana took a deep breath. All right, it happened the day we were prepping for a barbecue and swim party. Steve's coworkers were coming over that evening, but that morning he called to say he had to handle an emergency with one of their biggest clients. It meant he'd be gone for hours. Jana tilted her head, her curiosity evident. So, what happened? Steve's business partner, Ron, decided to step in and help me get everything ready, Lana began. He knew Steve would be gone for a while, and Ron, well, let's just say he's a manipulator. Jana frowned, her expression tightening. Ron? The divorced one? The one with the reputation? Lana nodded. That's the one, and I knew he had a thing for me. I should have told Steve, but I liked the attention. I flirted back. Sometimes more than I should have. Jana arched an eyebrow. So, when he showed up to help? I was already in trouble, Lana admitted, her tone wry. That morning, I was lounging by the pool in this tiny bikini, just waiting for Steve to come home so we could start setting up. Jana exhaled sharply. Lana, no. Yep, Lana said with a self-deprecating laugh. I'd had a couple of margaritas. Not drunk, but definitely feeling good. I should have gone inside and changed, but I didn't. And Ron? Jana pressed. He ate it up, Lana said with a shrug, and I was enjoying every second of it. Jana shook her head in disbelief. You're unbelievable, Lana grinned unapologetically. We started setting up the patio, moving chairs, stocking the bar, setting out the food. Then Ron made us both drinks and we sat by the pool. That's when he started talking about how hot it was, how tempting the water looked. Jana's eyes narrowed, her tone sharp. Lana. And then, Lana continued with a sly smile, he mentioned he didn't have swim trunks, and being me, I giggled and said he could go in without them. Jana covered her mouth. No, you didn't, Lana laughed. I told him I wouldn't peek. Jana stared at her wide-eyed. And? Lana smirked. And instead of playing along, you know what he did? Jana leaned forward. No way. Lana shook her head, a mix of disbelief and amusement in her expression. Yeah, he just started stripping. When he was down to his boxers, he got close and said, Come on, let's swim together. Lose the swimsuit. I should have run inside, but between the drinks and my reckless side, I didn't. Instead, I let him take my swimsuit off and I jumped in the pool, completely without anything. Within seconds, Ron was in there with me, his hands all over my body. She paused, the memory playing on her face, torn between shame and exhilaration. We explored each other, touching, teasing. It was so wrong, but it felt incredible. And then, Ron did things Steve never had. I lost control. It was one of the most intense peaks I've ever had. The rush of something new, something so forbidden. It was like nothing else. Lana exhaled deeply before continuing. When I finally caught my breath, Ron looked at me and said, Your turn now. I didn't even hesitate. After that, we had a couple more drinks, and he wanted to go again. This time it was rough, almost primal. I knew I'd have bruises. When he finished, I suddenly snapped out of it. I pushed him away, told him to leave me alone. He tried to come closer, but I started crying. The guilt hit me all at once. She glanced down at her coffee, her voice quieter. That night, I had to cover up so Steve wouldn't see the bruises. I begged Ron to keep quiet, and he agreed, saying it wouldn't be good for either of us if Steve ever found out. So far, he hasn't tried to push for a repeat, and thank God for that. I will never cheat again. But the problem is, we still see each other. We play golf together, we run in the same circles, and Ron, he's a braggart. I know he's telling stories. Steve even mentioned that Ron keeps bragging about some wildcat he hooked up with, but won't say who. I know he's talking about me. Jana's eyes widened. Lana, that's insane. Lana nodded grimly. If Steve ever figures it out, I think he'd eliminate both of us. And honestly, we'd deserve it. Later that day, Lana called Jana. Hey babe, everything back to normal yet? No, Jana admitted, anxiety lacing her voice. God, Lana, I haven't heard a word from Nick. I really thought we were past this. Lana hesitated. Do you think he went looking for Mark? Jana frowned. I don't know. My mom mentioned a guy I used to work with, Mark. Got kicked up leaving a bar years ago. You think that was Nick? Hard to say, Lana murmured. Jana swallowed hard. I'm afraid to ask. Besides, what good would it do? I already made him relive this mess last night. I don't want to cause him any more pain. I think he might actually leave me this time. No way, Lana said firmly. He loves you too much. He's just hurt. He's reliving it, that's all. He already forgave you. At least for what he knows. He'll come around. Jana sighed, her voice trembling. We were about to start trying for a baby, Lana. I quit drinking at your party last night because we had planned to start trying this month. Now I don't even know if we have a future. Lana perked up. Wait, you're trying to get pregnant? That's amazing. I stopped my birth control 3 days ago, but now... Jana hesitated. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Maybe he's glad we don't have kids yet. Makes a divorce easier. Stop it, Lana said softly. He's probably just drowning his sorrows in whiskey in some motel room. Give him time. Trust me, he'll be back, and he'll be putting a baby in you before you know it. Now, I gotta go. My grizzly bear is growling at me. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? Jana forced a small smile. Go take care of Steve. We'll talk later. They hung up, and Jana spent the rest of the night waiting on the couch for Nick to come home. But he never did. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and she fell asleep around 3 a.m., curled up alone. Nick woke early Saturday morning, threw a few things into a bag, and drove to a diner. As he stirred his coffee, the events of the previous night replayed in his mind. That damn woman. His jaw clenched. So I'm not her best? Guess Mark really gave her the time of her life. Which? He glanced at his phone, then turned it off. Let her wonder where I am. He pushed his ham and eggs around his plate, appetite gone. His mind raced. What the hell am I supposed to do now? Do I go home? Or do I finally walk away from this nonsense? He exhaled sharply. Divorce. Do I really want that, or am I just pissed off? His fingers tightened around his coffee cup. Maybe I should go back and knock the hell out of that fool again. But then he shook his head. No, I was lucky the first time. If I get caught, it's not worth it. I need to think. He mulled over his options. I could hit a club. No, not in this mood. Maybe the golf course. Yeah, I'll figure things out there. At the course, he joined a couple of guys for a round, but kept his own cart, staying quiet. Afterward, he made his way to the clubhouse bar, relieved to see Susie Q tending it. She was his favorite bartender, always flirty, always teasing, but never crossing the line. This time, though, she gave him a curious look. What's up, stranger? You're usually more fun, Nick sighed. The usual disaster at home. Susie leaned in with a playful smile. Come on, you always say you can tell me anything. Nick swirled the whiskey in his glass. Last night, my wife announced to an entire room that I'm not the best lover she's ever had. Susie blinked. Damn, was she trying to pick a fight or what? I don't believe for a second that's true. You flirt with me like a man who knows exactly what he's doing. Nick let out a low chuckle. I wish that actually meant something right now. Susie's eyes twinkled. Maybe it could. Nick looked up, startled. You serious? She smirked, resting her elbows on the bar. I've been serious about you for a while. You just never noticed. Nick stared at her, caught off guard. Did I really have a chance with her all this time? Susie tilted her head, giving him a curious look. So, let me get this straight. Your wife cheated, you took her back, and she actually gave you hall passes to make things fair? Nick nodded. It's in writing. She scoffed. I don't care how mad I was. I'd never tell my man he wasn't the best in bed. That's something you never say. Nick checked his watch, still processing everything. Susie leaned in, her voice low and deliberate. I'm off at 5. If you want to use one of those passes, be here. She turned away, tending to other customers, leaving Nick alone with his thoughts. She wasn't just teasing. She was serious. Jana had agreed to this deal, and Susie was offering him exactly what he needed, a way to take back his pride. At 3 p.m., he dropped a generous tip on the counter and caught her eye as he walked past. I'll be here, he said. She smirked. Good. Driving home, his mind kept circling back to her. That body, that confidence, the way every guy in that bar watched her. Jesus. He gripped the wheel tighter. Jana never felt the pain of betrayal. Maybe if she had, she wouldn't have been so careless with me. Screw it. I'll shower, change, and be back by 5. Let's see if she meant it. By 4:45, he was back at the bar. Susie spotted him immediately, her lips curving into a knowing smile. She poured him a whiskey and cola, sliding it across the counter. After that tip earlier, this one's on the house, she said, winking. She nodded toward the back. Bill's taking over. Give me a few minutes to close up. I'm starving, thinking about where we should go for dinner. Nick pulled out his phone and booked a table at one of the best restaurants in town. If he was doing this, he was doing it right. Over dinner, she wanted answers. Why now? What finally pushed him over the edge? He told her everything he knew. She kept things vague about herself. I'm divorced, she said simply. Flirting played a role in that. I wasn't the perfect wife. Later, at a club, she moved against him on the dance floor, her body warm, deliberate. By the third song, she leaned in, fingers brushing the back of his neck. Look, she murmured, I know you're trying to take things slow. Be the gentleman. But I already made my intentions clear. She met his eyes. Let's get out of here. No hesitation. At her apartment, she smirked. Drink while I change? Nick nodded. He took a sip of whiskey and nearly choked when she returned, wearing nothing but a Steelers jersey. His throat went dry. Jesus. She walked up to him, pressing her body against his. Glad you approve. She kissed him, slow, deep, full of promise. He let his hands roam over her bare skin as she took his hand and led him toward the bedroom, pulling his shirt off as they went. I hope you're staying the night, she whispered, because I have plans. Nick had no objections. Susie was different, confident, unapologetic, and completely giving. Every move was intentional, every touch designed to make him feel wanted in a way he hadn't in years, and damn, it worked. Afterward, tangled together, she traced her fingers down his chest. So, worth it. Nick exhaled. That was incredible, she smirked. Good, but just remember, guys have rules too. He frowned. Like what? She whispered, never tell your woman she's not the best. The realization hit, and he chuckled. Understood. She stretched lazily, utterly satisfied. Lie down. I'll grab us drinks. Then we'll really get started. Nick watched Susie disappear into the kitchen, her bare silhouette lingering in his mind. Damn, she's something else. Later, she straddled him, her fingers kneading into his muscles, easing away every last bit of tension. The second round was slower, more intense, stretching out the pleasure. When they finally collapsed, breathless and tangled in each other, she brushed a damp strand of hair from his forehead. Did you ever think this would happen? She asked, her voice husky. Nick chuckled. Not even a little. She arched a brow. Not once? He hesitated, then smirked. Okay, maybe I thought about you a couple of times when Jana and I were together, but I felt guilty, so I'd usually just think about you in the shower after. She laughed, tracing a finger down his jaw. I never thought it would actually happen either, but I definitely fantasized about it. Nick exhaled, still caught in the afterglow. It's even better in real life, she sighed in agreement. So much better. Stay the night, Nick. Just this once. Let's make it special. He nodded, and she curled into him, her body warm against his. The next morning, the scent of bacon pulled Nick from sleep. He stretched, rolling over to find the bed empty. When he stepped into the kitchen, Susie was already dressed, pouring coffee, breakfast spread out on the counter. You didn't have to do all this, he said. She shrugged. I wanted to. No regrets. Susan, she held up a hand. Nick, don't. I know you love your wife. I'm not looking for more than last night. I wanted you, and you wanted me. Simple as that. Nick exhaled, relieved she wasn't making things messy. She smirked. Besides, I'm not the settle-down type. That's what ended my marriage. Nick smirked back. I always thought your ex was an idiot. She laughed. He was, but we both knew marriage wasn't for us. That's not you, though, is it? Nick shook his head. No, it's not. She nodded. Then eat. When you walk out that door, we go back to normal. Just two flirty friends at the club. Nick sipped his coffee, knowing last night was exactly what he needed. But now it was time to go home and face Jana. Before he left, he pulled Susie into a deep kiss, making her melt against him one last time. As he reached for the door, she called out, If you ever want to use another pass, you know where to find me. Nick smirked. You'll be my first choice. And with that, he walked out. Sunday morning, Jana woke to her phone ringing. Lana. She groaned, rubbing her tired eyes. Hello? Has Steve heard from Nick? Jana sat up. No, nothing. You? Lana sighed. No, sorry, but Steve's starting to ask questions. He thinks Nick's reaction is too extreme for just a stupid joke. Panic flared in Jana's chest. You didn't tell him, did you? Please tell me you didn't. Of course not, Lana reassured her. I promised. But look, it's just been a day. He's probably hung over somewhere. Try not to freak out. I'm trying, but did he pack anything? A shaving kit? Lana hesitated. Yeah, he took his electric toothbrush razor. Jana's breath hitched. What about his suits? He always wears a suit to work. Lana was silent for a moment. No, I think they're all still in the closet. Jana swallowed. Then he has to come back today. He wouldn't go to work looking unprepared. Right? Lana's voice softened. Exactly. And when he does, just shower him with love. But what if he doesn't come back? Jana whispered. What if this time he really leaves me? He won't, Lana said firmly. He already forgave you once. He's pissed, but he'll calm down. You might have to take some crap, but do what you have to do. Jana felt her stomach twist. I just need him home. I need to show him how much I love him. A distant sound made her freeze. The garage door. Wait, I hear something. The garage. He's back. Relief surged through her. I have to go. Call me later, Lana said. Jana hung up and rushed to the kitchen, heart pounding. Nick walked in, his expression unreadable. We need to talk, he said, his voice firm. Jana swallowed hard. This is it. She had been dreading this conversation for the last 48 hours, terrified he'd tell her it was over. Nick exhaled, tension rolling off him. You ripped my heart out, Jana. The moment you said that, all I could think about was him, what you did with him. And if I wasn't the best, then that means your affair was more than just a mistake. Jana's breath hitched. She couldn't let him think that. She had to stop this. She took his hands, repeating the same words she had texted him that morning. Baby, I swear that's not what I meant. I was drunk, joking, teasing my husband. I wasn't thinking about the past when I said it. No one there thought I meant it seriously. She squeezed his hands tighter. Even Lana feels terrible. She's called me a dozen times, wondering why you're taking it so hard. She wants to apologize. She thinks she made things worse. Nick clenched his jaw. I don't want Lana involved in this. This is between us. He looked her dead in the eyes. Tell me you didn't tell her everything. No, baby, of course not, Jana said quickly. This is just between us. She inhaled, steadying herself. I love you. You are the best thing that's ever happened to me. Please let me fix this. Nick exhaled sharply, his expression softening just a little. Okay, let's say I believe you. There's something else I need to tell you. Jana's stomach dropped. What is it? Nick hesitated. I went to the club yesterday. I thought hitting a few rounds would clear my head. But I was so angry, Jana. I kept seeing you with him. The memories, the betrayal, it all came rushing back. I felt like I hated you. Jana braced herself, sensing the weight of Nick's words before he even spoke. I left the course and went to the bar, planning to drink myself numb, he admitted. The guys I was with left. And Susie, she noticed something was off. We've always flirted, so she asked what was wrong. A cold knot tightened in Jana's stomach. Nick exhaled. I was already drunk, so I told her everything. About the party, what you said, how it made me feel. His jaw clenched. And then, she told me if I wanted to cash in one of my hall passes, she'd be off at 5. Jana's breath hitched. Nick. I went back to the course, played a few more holes, trying to decide if I wanted to go through with it. His voice darkened. I even thought about divorcing you. The words sent her into full panic. Nick saw the fear in her face and stepped closer. But I didn't want that, he admitted. I just wanted you to hurt the way I did. I know it's petty, but I needed you to feel it too. He sighed. So just before she clocked out, I went back. Jana's stomach dropped. Susie knew. We had dinner. We went dancing. And then I spent the night with her. Tears spilled over before she could stop them. Nick looked down. It wasn't meaningless. It wasn't just a drunken mistake. It was deliberate. I wanted to punish you. He let out a bitter chuckle. And now? I feel worse. A strangled sob escaped her lips. Oh my God! She turned away, shaking. She couldn't look at him, couldn't breathe in the same space. She ran to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. Nick stood there, staring at the closed door. He could knock, try to explain, but what was the point? She was feeling exactly what he had wanted her to feel, and it felt horrible. Regret gnawed at him. What have I done? Restless, he went outside and mowed the lawn, then their elderly neighbors, anything to keep moving. But when he finished, Jana's car was gone. By the time he washed his truck, she was back. She stepped out, carrying a small bag, her eyes puffy and red. Their gazes met for a fleeting second, but she said nothing, just walked inside. Nick sighed, watching her disappear. She was in the kitchen when he finally went inside, quietly preparing dinner. You went to the store? He asked cautiously. No, she said without turning. Just picked up something from the pharmacy. Left it in the car yesterday while I was out looking for you. Nick rubbed the back of his neck. Where did you go? She hesitated. The golf club? His stomach tightened. Why? I wanted to talk to her. his chest constricted. Susie? Yes. Her voice was eerily calm. I begged her not to take my husband from me. Nick exhaled. Yana, that was never going to happen. She said the same thing, Yana admitted. Told me she doesn't do exclusive relationships, that she knows for a fact that you love me. Nick stayed silent. She also asked if I really said that, about you not being the best. Yana swallowed. When I nodded, she looked at me like I was insane, asked if I was drunk or just stupid when I said something like that in front of everyone. Nick clenched his jaw. What did you say? I told her I was just teasing. Yana exhaled. She said there's nothing funny about that, especially in public. She sighed. Want to hear the rest of her advice? Nick smirked slightly. Go on. Yana hesitated, then smiled for the first time in days. She said a woman's job is to build up her man's ego, always, especially in public. That I should be telling you you're the strongest, the smartest, the most handsome, and of course, the best lover in the world. Nick let out a dry chuckle. Oh, really? Yep, Yana rolled her eyes. Just like you love hearing that I'm the most beautiful, most irresistible wife. Nick smirked. And do you believe that? She shrugged. It doesn't have to be 100% true. What matters is that you believe I see you that way. She stepped closer, resting her hands on his chest. You want to be my hero. Let me see you that way. Nick shook his head, laughing softly. And what else did she say? She told me to look into your eyes with adoration, Yana teased, and not to tell you that part or it wouldn't work as well. Nick sighed, shaking his head. Susan thinks she's got this all figured out, huh? Maybe she does. Yana bit her lip, then met his gaze, more serious now. But none of this matters if we don't answer one thing. Nick studied her. What's that? Do you still want to be married? Nick exhaled slowly. I love you, Yana. I want us to stay together. But Friday night, he shook his head. It shattered me, almost as much as what happened 5 years ago. Yana swallowed hard. I thought we had healed from that. Nick looked away. Then why did you say it? Her heart clenched. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking, but you planned this. You wanted me to hurt. Her voice wavered. And I do. I feel sick thinking about you touching her. She forced herself to hold his gaze. But I know this is my fault, and I accept that. I accept the consequences of my mistake. Tears welled in her eyes. I just don't want to lose you. Nick didn't say a word. Instead, he simply opened his arms and Yana collapsed into them, holding onto him as if he were the only thing keeping her together. Nicky, she murmured, her voice muffled against his chest. Does this make us even? Nick let out a slow breath, his fingers threading through her hair. I'm not sure. Yana pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. I know I agreed to those hall passes when we rebuilt our marriage, she admitted, her voice trembling. But I don't think I can handle it if you keep seeing her. He was quiet for a moment before responding. I think you're the only one who can answer that. Her breath caught. Nick hesitated before continuing. I never asked for details about what happened back then. I didn't want to know. Even when we went through counseling, I avoided the truth because I couldn't bear to hear it. I already had nightmares about what you did with him, and I was afraid reality would be worse than my imagination. His gaze locked onto hers. But I need to know now. Was there more? Yana's entire body tensed. This was the moment she had dreaded for 5 years, the moment she had rehearsed lying about over and over in her mind. Because the truth wasn't just an affair with one man. It had been 2, a reckless, drunken night of surrender, where passion had clouded all judgment. It had been the most intense, thrilling, and intoxicating sexual experience of her life. And if Nick ever knew the real truth, she would lose him forever. Now she had 2 choices. Tell him everything and watch her world crumble, or lie. Her voice was steady, though her heart pounded like a drum. No, Nick. It was just him. Just one terrible mistake. Nick studied her face, his gaze searching for something. Hesitation, dishonesty, regret. Yana refused to let anything show. Finally, she placed her hands on his face, looking at him with everything she had left to give. We need to stop trying to level the playing field or we'll never move forward. If you can forgive me, if we can move past this, I'll never mention Susie again. She swallowed hard, holding his gaze. I need to know, are we even? Nick let out a slow breath, his shoulders finally relaxing. Yes, we're even. Yana closed her eyes, relief washing over her. Nick pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. We've put each other through hell, and if we keep trying to settle the score, there won't be anything left of us. He cupped her cheek, his voice raw. I don't need the passes anymore. I only want you. Tears spilled over her lashes. I love you more than you'll ever know. She forced a weak smile. And I swear, I'll never make you doubt that you're my best in every way. That night, the past was locked away like a buried relic, never to be unearthed again. They had survived. And survival was all that mattered. In the weeks that followed, Yana and Lana continued meeting, their friendship as strong as ever. But there was a silent understanding between them now, a shared knowledge that some secrets had to stay buried. They both knew that if their marriages were going to last, they had to let go of their past mistakes. But something in Lana changed. Seeing how close Yana had come to losing Nick made Lana reevaluate her own life. The teasing, the flirting, the reckless little games, things she had once seen as harmless, suddenly didn't feel so harmless anymore. So, she made a choice. She stopped entertaining attention from other men. She became more present in her marriage. She gave more affection, more devotion, more reassurance. And Steve noticed immediately. His wife, who had always been playful and charming with everyone, now seemed to reserve all of that for him. When he asked why, she simply smiled and said, Because I realized I was taking you for granted, and I never want to do that again. He didn't question it. If anything, he embraced it. Their closeness deepened. Their connection grew stronger. Maybe, in her own way, she had taken Susie's advice to heart, reminding her husband every single day that he was, in every way, the best. 3 months later, fate intervened. Yana's birth control failed. She was pregnant. Nick was elated, seeing it as a new beginning, a sign that they had truly left the past behind and were building something new, something permanent. For him, the past was gone, or so they both thought. 1 year after the infamous Truth or Dare night, karma came swinging. Ron, Steve's business partner, the man Lana had secretly been with, got blackout drunk during a golf game, and in his booze-fueled arrogance, he let something slip. He boasted about her, the wildest woman he had ever been with, the one who had left him wrecked. The only problem? Steve was standing right there, and he knew exactly who Ron was talking about. His reaction was immediate. The first punch sent Ron to the ground. When he tried to get up, the second punch knocked him out cold. Ron's unconscious body lay sprawled across the 16th tee, his golf bag dumped beside him like trash. Steve didn't return home quietly. The moment he walked through the door, rage radiated from every part of him. Lana took one look at his face and broke down before he could even speak. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "Please, Steve, please forgive me." But forgiveness wasn't easy. Steve moved out. He needed time to decide if their marriage was even worth saving. Ron, meanwhile, realized just how badly he had screwed up. The affair had been their secret. If Steve found out, it could ruin everything. Not just their marriages, but their business. And now, Steve wanted him gone. With no other choice, Ron took a buyout, a fraction of what his shares were worth, just to disappear quietly. Lana's world fell apart, and Yana, she watched, terrified, as everything collapsed around her best friend. It was a chilling reminder of how easily everything could be lost. But through it all, Lana never betrayed her. She could have. She could have taken everything down with her. She could have exposed Yana's biggest, darkest secret. But she didn't. Instead, she picked up the shattered pieces of her life and survived. Months passed. Lana navigated life as a single mother, rebuilding what she had lost. And then, fate stepped in. She met someone new, an account manager assigned to her town temporarily. They had met before, years ago at a business event, but back then it was nothing more than small talk. Now, they were both single. They started dating. When his assignment ended, she and her kids moved with him. A year later, they were married. But something else changed. Her friendship with Yana, it didn't survive. The very thing that had once bonded them, their secrets, became the thing that pushed them apart. There was too much history, too much they couldn't say out loud, too many reminders of what they had done. Eventually, their connection faded, until all that remained were the occasional Christmas cards and a few scattered calls. Only 4 people in the world knew Yana's secret. Mark and Jake, the men from that night, had moved away long ago. Lana was gone, starting over in a new life. That left only her. And now, the only person who could destroy her marriage was herself. And she would never let that happen.